What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Brainwash to be Broke, the show where we talk about all the brainwashing stories, patterns, and beliefs that we've been taught since we were born and what is truly possible. Because I don't believe that people lack some type of talent. I believe that people are basically playing based on somebody else's script instead of following what they truly are capable of. So today we are here with another amazing guest. Her name is Kathryn Lancioni. Uh, do I?
Sure. You're pretty good. Yeah, yeah,
Is it all right? Perfect.
yeah. So
Uh,
you're good. Yeah.
awesome. Thank you so much. And we will be diving. She's a mentor. She's in the coaching industry. She's helping and inspiring people, and the new generation to build better lives, more successful, more fulfilling. And she's also a speaker. She's loved traveling, and I'm super excited to have her here and talk about this topic. So welcome to the show, Kathryn. And the first question would be: so for those who don't know you,
Okay.
where did you get, how did you get into entrepreneurship, and how this all started for you?
Yeah, no, Adam, thanks for having me on the show
So for
and it's nice to meet everybody. So as Adam says, my name is Kathryn Lancioni and I'm based in New York Metro. And so my backstory is one, I don't know, it kind of took an unexpected twist a couple of years ago. So um born and raised in the Philadelphia area, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which is about, I don't know, 2 hours from New York City by car. Moved to New York out of college and went into the journalism field. Went back to grad school at Columbia, got a grad degree at Columbia Journalism, and I wanted to be the next editor of Vogue. That was always my dream. Anna Wintour was in that job much longer than anyone ever thought, so I never got to fulfill that one. But anyway, kind of was a journalist for a while, and then fell into the PR industry. Was in PR for a really long time, worked on the agency side. So with that, agencies like Edelman and Ogilvy, and then went on the corporate side, took a company public on the New York Stock Exchange. Had a couple of kids along the way, and and then became a college professor, simultaneous to doing some consulting in PR. And I've been teaching on the collegiate level since 2009. And I've taught at a variety of public and private schools throughout the US. I've done some stuff in Europe and in India. And I've always focused on communication. It's just kind of what I love, and I see how good communication skills can really transform people.
100%.
So that was always my focus. And these days, as Adam says, I'm a college professor. I coach, and I also host a podcast called the Gut Punch Podcast. So different from Adam's, but similar in that we have the privilege of meeting and interviewing people from all over the world.
That's awesome. So let's go even more at the beginning of your story.
Okay.
What was the childhood for you? Where did you find the passion to start a business or do something for like coaching and so on?
Yeah. So I was never good at math or science. And the irony of that is my sister's a medical researcher. She's a doctor, infectious diseases, but I'm like terrible at it. It's like, I always say like, and when I work with people, I always say, you know what you're good at, you know what you're great at, and you know what you're terrible at. I'm terrible at math and science. So it became very apparent to me early on in life that I should not go into a science or medical profession. So I didn't, but I've always loved working with people. I'm one of those people that I definitely get my energy from others. I love interacting with people. I love mentoring. I love guiding, and I love learning.
Mhm.
And I love talking to people. So that became abundantly clear to me when I was a little kid. Both of my parents are college professors, so that I did. They say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So I kind of, and my mom taught speech and my dad taught marketing, and I do communication. So it's kind of the perfect blend. But
Interesting.
so it was very early on that I knew that I needed to focus not on math and science, but more on the communication thing. And I always have enjoyed writing. And so that I find it very therapeutic. So that for me was kind of a natural point to land in.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it's very interesting when it comes to I'm not going to against straight up the way that you express it,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
what I want to bring up here is that people like to, you know, completely like push away from them something that they can actually be good at, because
Well,
nothing's become like, you know, when you said that I've never been good at something or never been good at that, right? So it's better to like, I get it, maybe like from your perspective it's like
yeah,
literally like, you know, this is the way that like I'm finding the passion and so on. But in my opinion, every skill set is learnable, like completely every skills. It doesn't matter if you are good or not or whatever. But when people say like, that's like, this is, you know, this is not what I supposed to probably do or something like that,
right.
you know what I'm trying to say about
I
it.
do, and
Mhm.
I think the way that I view that is there are things that we enjoy and things that we don't enjoy, right?
Right. Yes.
And
Yep.
you get to a certain point in your education, and you get to a certain point in your career, like when you're at least in the U.S., like when you're in high school, when you if you go to college, there's certain courses you have to take, general ed requirements as they call it, and
Yes.
then whatever your major is, requirements for that. But then you graduate from university, in your early 20s in most cases, and you're free to focus on what you want to focus on. And
100.
I think that, to your point, early on, it's important to try things that interest you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Try things that you think you might derive pleasure from, that you might derive intellectual pleasure from, physical pleasure from, health pleasure, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is. Um, and that's really important because if you don't do it, then you never know, right?
Yes.
Um, and I think that's really important. I know one of my things has always been, and it's still true to this day, whenever an opportunity comes along, I consider it. I always investigate it,
Yep.
conversation, email, whatever. As I always say, I always try to peek around the corner, because if you don't investigate, if you don't ask questions, if you don't explore, you won't know. And you don't want to get to a point in life where you look back and you're like, oh, I should have done this. I should have tried this. Like, I know for me, the way I got into PR, into public relations, was I literally answered an ad in the paper, and I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know what it was for. It was just kind of, it said, if you have what it takes to manage a high tech marketing account, send us your resume. And I had been a journalist, gone to grad school, had focused on the tech sector when I was writing, and I really enjoyed that. And the reason
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed it is because I was never the smartest person in the room, and I like being that.
Well,
I like being able to ask questions, and they're like, it's okay.
yeah.
Um, and so I never would have gotten into a field that I
Mm-hmm.
loved. And I think building on that, another big thing for me is intimidation, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm intimidated by something, then I have to try it,
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, it's going to be scary on the entry point, but if you can figure it out, and I've always been pretty good at figuring stuff out, you're going to thrive. And so the
Mm-hmm.
analogy I always give is like, if you're on, like when you're a little kid and if you go to a swim club and there's diving boards, they're hard to
Yep.
find these days. But when I was a kid, we belonged to a club and they had it seemed really high, this really high diving board. And it was like social pressure because it was the most popular thing at the pool. And there was this line of kids. And so if you decided to do it, you had to, because you climbed up the big ladder, and you would get to the top, and all the people down below were like, hey, come on, go. And you looked, and even though you had done that jump, I mean, in my case, frequently, you were still scared. And, at some point you just like, I don't know, like jump, and
Mm-hmm.
you land and you're okay. And I think so much of life is like that diving board analogy, where we get really scared to climb to the top. We get even more scared to get to the edge of the diving board. But at some point, we let ourselves jump. And
Yep.
at some point, we get into that water, or whatever the equation is, that situation, and we learn how to swim.
Yep.
And I know for me, the early part of my career, I was always the youngest person in the room. I was
Mm-hmm.
always like like a decade at least. And it was hard at first, but then it was okay. And then as I got sort of mid-career, I was the only woman in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a different type of intimidation.
Yep.
But you learn in, whether you're younger, whether you're the opposite gender, or whether it's a whole different scenario, if you give yourself permission, you learn how to swim. If you
Mm-hmm.
give yourself permission, you learn how to thrive. But I feel like, kind of as you were talking about when we started the show, so many people are preconditioned to believing that they can only do one thing based upon their background, their education,
Yep.
what they're good at, or what they're not so good at. But the reality is, you got to try and you got to explore.
Yep.
And it's okay, in my opinion, it's okay to try something and be like, you know what, I don't want to do that because the reality is everybody can't be good at everything. It's a
Yep.
big world, there's lots of
Yes.
opportunity,
Yeah.
but you don't want to dismiss something just because it's uncomfortable, because then you're
One.
missing out on stuff. I for me, I did really I sort of expanded careers, right? Because I was a PR person for a long
Mhm.
time. And then I fell into academics. And I, because my parents were college professors, I had always been curious about teaching, but I swore I would never do it because that's what they did. But I found myself in a situation mid-career where I was too experienced in PR to be hired where I lived, where I moved out of New York and I had moved to a suburb and in upstate New York, up in Rochester, and got up there and I was told, like, they're like, Kathryn, we love you, but you're too experienced. We can't hire you. And
Mm.
that's not like, that's a really weird thing to have someone say to you. Basically, it's
Yes.
like, you got too much knowledge. There's no job for you here. But it's a thing and it happens all the time. Um, so I was unemployable and
Mhm.
I've always enjoyed working. I've never seen myself as someone who wouldn't work. So someone said to me, you should teach college. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh God, that's what my parents do. But, and I had never done it, but somebody gave me a break and he said, look, he's like, you've got this, you've got the background in PR and communications, because you've been a practitioner, you've got a good personality, you're going to be fine. And first day, first class was a public speaking class, which I've taught consistently since 2009. And I stood there and it was kind of like a lightning bolt moment, I call it. I was standing there teaching the class, introducing myself to the class. And I was like, oh my God, I love this. And I've been like, that's been my thing since 2009. And ever since then, I've written a couple of books, started the podcast, gotten into coaching. All of that came from that love of people
Mhm.
and that love of really giving back and mentoring. And as I said earlier, like, I really thrive on the energy of other people. So I love conversation. I love meeting people. I love learning. And so, it was by really an unexpected change in careers that I discovered something that, like, literally that motivates me, that drives me, that, it doesn't seem like work. Like, there's that, like, kitsch phrase, oh, if you, make your passion into your job. Well, I didn't even know it was a passion and it became my job. And then it kind of became a passion along the
Yes.
way. And that was kind of a really nice, for me, unexpected life development, kind of early to mid career for me. And, it changed it changed everything. It changed how I look at myself. It changed my career. It changed everything, and it changed everything for the good.
Mhm.
Um, and someone said in one of my shows, you don't want your background to define you, and that's
Mhm.
true. You don't
Mhm.
want your education to define you. You don't want
Yes.
your qualifications to define you. You want you to define you.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a really important thing that many people are afraid to
Mhm.
do
Yes.
because they're afraid of failing.
Exactly. Yeah. They rather to label things straight up without even trying because the feeling of failure, in my opinion, is way bigger than actually the enjoyment of succeeding on something.
Yes. Yes.
Crazy.
But the irony is, as you know, we learn more from failure than we do success.
Holy smokes. It's a big time there. 100.
Failure makes us pause and reflect. Success is
Yes.
fleeting.
And that's
And I think
straight
so.
up.
Here's
Yeah.
something, here's something I came up with once, and I said
Uh,
this to a bunch of people, and everyone's like, wow, failure is not true failure, is not recognizing your mishaps, right? So, because everyone is shooting, and the thing about success being so fleeting, like, we're a society of people. I don't care where I've been all over the world, and it seems it's the same everywhere, that we all go from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing,
mhm.
especially these days with social media, blah, blah, blah. And, but when the things don't work out, then we pause and we're like, oh, like, why didn't that happen?
Mhm.
No one ever does that with success. We just go on to the next thing.
Yep.
But, like, if you don't acknowledge your failure, that is actually failing.
Yeah.
But if you're like, yeah, it didn't work out that way that I wanted it to, and this is what I learned. Like that's
Yes.
the most of that to me is success. So success is acknowledging the failure and learning from it.
Hmm.
Failure is not acknowledging when you fail. And with this whole like FOMO filtered society that we live in,
Yes.
people don't like to admit that like things can be tough. But
Yeah.
like, and again, this horrible quote, but it's true. To get comfortable, you need to be uncomfortable.
Mm.
And it's just so true in I mean, from my experience in every aspect in life, it's so true.
Yeah. So true. I
Yeah.
love it because when it comes to like it's so funny because when it comes to I'm when you get back into like some type of like comfortable zone or so on,
Yeah.
I'm always trying to look for another way to get uncomfortable. It's so interesting because like
Yes.
for me it's like that I when I get comfortable, it's like I I can't feel the growth anymore. Like you know what I
You
mean?
get bored.
When
You
I'm
get
in the
bored. Yes.
say that again.
You get bored. When you get
Yeah, bored
comfortable, you get
exactly.
bored.
Right.
Yeah.
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 So and then you can see people where they live in their comfortable zones pretty much all their life, and
Yeah.
they just don't know what to do. So they're spending so much time on the phone, watching TV, and so on. I hate those things. I'm not on like I haven't been watching TV maybe like 10 years
Yeah.
already. Right? I'm
Yeah.
just literally like, and I love, like, when you said, I love learning and like studying and still improving yourself all the time and getting better and better in all of those skills. Because, like, if you have mindset, in my opinion, success is basically like skill set and mindset together. If you figure out, like, if you get really good at the skill and you master the skill and you have the mindset, there is nothing can stop you. And like, you can I don't believe that if something happened and you still have the skills and you have the mindset, you're gonna get back into that situation, be wealthy or be successful or whatever, so fast
Yeah.
because you just know what it takes or what to do, and like you have the skills. And then there are people that they try it once or maybe twice or maybe even 10 times, and they think that it doesn't work because like I don't know, maybe it is not for me or something like that. But like, do you know how many times I've been doing, for example, reach outs and so on, like to figure out actually how I can get people on my show? I did 2,000 messages to be able to master the way how I can approach people, so I'm getting like a decent amount of
You're getting flow. Yeah.
responses. It's
Yeah.
so crazy. And then people are like, I tested it 100 times and it didn't work. Well, did you learn something? And I love that analogy that you brought. Always failure is always like, it's a feedback basically, and
Mhm.
you need to learn from it and then take it into your advantage and like do something differently or tweak it somehow, so it's actually going to it's basically a feedback for you, right? It's like data, collecting data,
It
and
is.
then do the next step. So I
It is.
love what you said. And when it comes to the learning, how important for you is learning and how important is for success learning?
Yeah, no, well, it's funny you asked that because as I mentioned, I teach university, and a class asked me a few weeks ago, so when do you stop learning? I'm like, never,
Never.
ever,
Yes,
like
exactly.
never, like for me, never. I've been doing these courses through Yale on their School of Management on women's leadership. And I took one, and so the first one I took was women in leadership, and the second one what I'm doing right now is leading with power and influence. It's fascinating, right? And this is, I mean, I already have my master's. Like, I don't need to do this, but like to me, I want to learn, I want to
Mhm.
grow, I want to expand. And the course I'm taking right now, like it's so interesting. I've actually been teaching in one of my classes, so that I teach them tomorrow. So it's a class on collaboration. And so the stuff I'm learning from the Yale course, I go in and I teach them the next day because it's so interesting to me. And I just find it so fascinating. So I I'll never stop learning. Because I learn right now, like I said, I'm taking the courses, I teach, so I learn from my students, and through the podcast, I learn from
Mhm.
interviewing different people. And I, like you, am innately curious. I was never the annoying kid in the classroom that asked all the questions. That wasn't me. Um, but I always had them. I just didn't always raise my hand because I knew don't necessarily want to
Yes,
be
I
that
was the
person, but
same
I
way,
kind of.
actually. It's so
Um,
crazy.
but I didn't want to be a social pariah. But I love talking to people.
Yeah,
And I just, I've, to quote my ninth grade math teacher, the only bad question is the one that isn't asked, right? So
exactly. I love
I
it. Oh,
Isn't
that's
that
so good.
great?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
great.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's so true. And so I tell that to my students all the time. I'm like, look, if y'all have questions, like you got to ask them because the only bad one is the one that's not being asked.
Mm,
And so that's why I love just talking to people. And I learned so much. I always say like I have like a lot of buffet knowledge. So I know a little about a lot because I teach public speaking classes. I learn from
mhm,
those. I have the podcast. I learn from those conversations. I go to a lot of networking events. I meet people all the time. And so to me, like learning is a continual thing. I think
mhm.
I believe that about learning about other people, you learn about yourself. And I think that that is so tremendously important. I honestly like I admire people that are just happy or complacent, and just doing their thing, but that's
Mhm,
not me. Um, really, just if something is interesting to me, I pursue it.
mhm,
Whether it's a speaking opportunity, whether it's a trip somewhere, whether it's a class that I want to take. If it piques my curiosity, I'll definitely do it. Or if I think it's not right for me, but for somebody else, I'll recommend someone to do
mhm.
it. Um, because I just think learning is like a lifelong process. And I think
Yeah,
it's such a big world and there's so much to learn. And these days, because of the internet and social media, learning is very, very easy to do.
yeah,
Um, we have now with AI, my God, we have absolutely no excuse for not being able to answer a question.
yeah.
Now the laziness is okay, you're not going to ask your bot what the question is, but you've got so many ways to do it now that like let the curiosity flow, like ask those questions because there's so much you can learn. And in learning about other things, you learn about yourself, and that's really important.
100%. Yeah. It's it's very interesting how you know the world is where it's going, because
Yeah.
I remember a couple of years ago, I've been still like, studying books basically on my own, like literally like reading them through
Yeah.
all of that. But now I basically plug it into AI and literally ask like, of course, I had to
Mhm.
read it or listen to it actually, at least. And then like I'm going deep into certain topics, like certain chapters basically, based on what I really want to understand. And then I'm asking questions based on like different, angles, different examples to actually understand it really well. This opportunity what we have right now with with the artificial intelligence is just insane. It's
Crazy.
insane how much we can learn and how the process is speed up. But most people, they just don't know how to use it, maybe because like the truth is that like there is like the AI is everywhere and nowhere in these days. Like
Yeah.
like you don't have pretty much like not many people know actually how to properly even like implement it, even like in their day-to-day job or even like into their businesses and so on. So it's like it's really interesting to see like where but I'm interested to see where it will go,
Agree.
right? But yeah, like learning, like I had this opinion that or point of view that when you know it seems like that the system that where we live in was set it up that we literally like dying in 21 years old, pretty much. Do you know
Well,
what I mean by
because
that?
I very much
Because
do
most of the
because
people stop learning in like literally after they finish school.
people become stagnant because the system, again, doesn't matter where you are in the world, the system is designed academically so that in most places you go to university
Yeah.
through 18, 20, 21, whatever it is, maybe some, and then, and, you know, in some places people just, they don't go to university, you know, which is fine. They do other things. But there's this uh, thought that that's good enough, right? And for some people it is. Um, you know, and I think, you know, people learn or enrich themselves in different ways. Like some people are big readers of books, right? And so even still, or they listen to audiobooks these days. And that's a way of learning. Some people listen to podcasts. They might listen to your show, my show, all the other shows that are out there. That's a way of learning. Some people, you know, play sports, and that's a way of learning.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important that, you know, learning doesn't have to be academic.
Mm-hmm.
Learning can be physical, mental, whatever. But it's just important to keep growing
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, when you become stagnant, like that's a real tough position to be in because I find in my own experience that like if you become stagnant, you become scared.
Mm-hmm.
And if you become stagnant and scared, means you're less likely to want to try new things. You're more likely to make excuses about why you can't do stuff. And I always say to people that like we as humans are our best friends and our worst enemies in that we can create all the reasons in the world why we shouldn't or can't do something.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's not really a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, like you want to grow physically, you want to grow mentally, you want to just keep that blood flowing through the body. You know, every doctor will tell you like if you injure your body, break your arm, your leg, whatever,
Yep.
active recovery as soon as you can, getting the blood to flow through the muscles is really important.
Yep.
And it's the same thing mentally, right? If we don't engage our brains in ways that they're working, right?
Yep.
That we get stagnant and whatever, and we just kind of like zone out. You know, it's like if you try to engage in conversation with someone that's fairly isolated, right? They don't know how to do it because they're by themselves so much.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's incredibly important that we as humans um, put ourselves out there and
Mm-hmm.
put ourselves in situations deliberately
Mm-hmm.
that are going to make us uncomfortable, where we learn to grow and evolve. Because at some point, you're going to find yourself unexpectedly
Yep. Yep.
in a situation where you've never been before and you don't know
Mm-hmm.
what to do. And if you don't know how to navigate that based upon
Mm-hmm.
prior experience, it's going to be really, really hard. And then you're going to get afraid, right? So as I mentioned, I teach public speaking, and I started teaching on the college level, but then I started a program for little kids, and it's called Presenting. It's a company. It's called Presenting Perfection. And what we do is we work with kids as young as 8 on public speaking, because when you're 8 years old, for the most part, you're not afraid to stand up in front of a room and talk about something, the movie
Yeah.
you watched, what you did over the weekend with your parents. But as we get older, it becomes scarier because we have this realization that people are judging us. When you're little, most kids don't.
Nobody care. Yeah, because
Right, right.
you don't really. Yeah.
So if you learn how to do it when you're young, it's going to be a lot easier when you're older, because what happens is as people evolve, we become more aware of interpersonal communication, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's conversation between people. And we realize that people also judge, especially in this day and age.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get very, very afraid of the idea of getting up in front of a room, whether it's, you know, in front of 8 people, 10 people, or 300 people, and having to give speech because we feel like people are judging us. But if we learn how to do it when we're little, when we're older, it's just kind of what we do, you know.
Yep.
And it's just so interesting to see like some of the kids that I work with that are little, that are now in college, like they're amazing public speakers
Yep.
because we started with them when they were young, you know. Um,
This is the
and you know, they've
programming straight
learned.
up in here. Like literally that what you are saying, like, you know, if you're going to set the person up straight up in the young age, childhood, this way, and like being in like uncomfortable in you know in different situations, and putting them into those situations and let them to actually explore it and like do like you know what you have to do, just you know be in that situation. It's
Yeah,
gonna train you completely differently, right? But we are like, since our young age, we are in that comfort zone where parents wants the best for us. I get it, like best for us, the
of
safe,
course,
like
of
the
course.
safest place for us and so on. Like I, you know, like of course, like being safe, like physically, so you are not like putting yourself into danger and so on, like, okay, but like mentally and like doing like the mindset work and so on, this is the pieces where we are actually stuck. And most of the people, they don't even believe that there is something like a mindset, right? Because like in the society, like they think that this is just how it is,
That's
right?
right. That's
And
right.
it's really
That's right.
interesting, like, because I'm really curious also about like why did you decided to go for public speaking? Because like in these days, this is one of the most like the scariest type of prophecies, or like what you can actually go and do, because like as you mentioned, so many people is so scared of being judged by other people. But it's so crazy to me because like don't get me wrong, I've been in the same spot, like literally the
Yeah.
same way. I've been so scared to be in front of the camera and talk to other people and like literally even like share my opinions, because like that's what we've been taught, right? But
Yeah.
I took the um responsibility behind like over it and like literally change it, because you can, everybody can,
Yes.
right?
So I think, it was funny that you ask how, because like it was like, as I mentioned, I kind of fell into teaching, and that was the first course that was offered. And I was
Yep.
so eager to try it, to try teaching, and then I was like, okay, I'll teach public speaking. And I had done, I had worked in industry for a long time. So I had
Mhm.
done a lot of, led meetings and all that kind of thing. But, honestly, I had never taught a class,
does
like a
it
formal
does
class.
it play does it play also with your self trust and self worthiness?
I think it when I first started teaching, it was almost 20 years ago, that I felt like I knew enough,
Hmm.
right? In terms of how to communicate, how to organize stuff. My dad, as I mentioned, my dad was a college professor. He's retired now. And he said something to me which was like so simple but so true. And anyone that's listening that teaches will appreciate this. Most college semesters have 14 weeks.
Uh-huh.
Most college textbooks have 14 chapters, and there's a reason for that. We
Mm.
teach a chapter a week, right? That was the most helpful advice anybody gave me. So I kind of channeled what my dad said, and did learned how to put together a curriculum. And this was way before AI, so I had to actually figure it out myself. And I think, so I started teaching public speaking just because it was available, but the reason I've stayed with it since '09, because I have taught it consistently since 2009, is
Mhm.
um, I see the difference it makes for people. I've
Mhm.
had people that are, stars of the football team, and so have this really big, D1, as we say in the US, like Division 1 athletes
Uh-huh.
who are in my classes. I get a lot of athletes, and they're really confident on the field.
Mhm.
But when they have to get in front of a classroom and give a speech, they get so scared. And it does, and I've said to them, wait, I don't understand this. Like for the football players, especially, like you're used to like being on the field with like 50,000, 60,000 people looking at
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can't it's challenging for you to give a speech in front of 25. They're like, yeah, but like when we're on the field, like it's kind of like the fans aren't there, right? The fans are so in the background. But when we're in the classroom, we're so cognizant of our
Oh yeah, the
24
attention
peers
is
looking at us.
directly. Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
see. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
And so I love teaching that subject because it makes a difference in people's lives, and
Yeah.
the data says that people, this is so crazy, people fear dying more than they do giving, the people fear giving a speech more than they do dying, right? So people would rather die than get up and say, "We're gonna give a speech."
That's crazy.
And like that, that having to get from someone who's almost died, like that's crazy. But no, I think for me, it's just, I've had people from all over the world in my classroom, all different personalities, people with really bad speech, challenges, like, stammers and stutters and stuff like that. And helping them navigate that
Mhm.
is so fulfilling. I remember a few years ago, I had a student in one of my public speaking classes who had a really, 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 really bad stutter.
Mhm.
And, he couldn't even introduce himself to me on the first day of class without stuttering. And by the time that we got through our 14-week semester, or the last week, he gave a speech, and it was an 8-minute speech, and he made it through the whole thing without stuttering.
Why?
I'll never forget, like, I started to cry, like,
Yeah.
every time
Yeah.
I tell the story, I kind of tear up. I started to cry because I was so proud of him. And
Why
I
do
was
you think? Sorry, just to stop you.
sorry.
Why do you think this is happening, like when people are having this type of anxiety, like extreme anxiety over, like, being in front of people and presenting. Why is it even happening? Like, do you think there is some trauma that's happened, like in the
No,
past, or?
well, it could be sometimes, it could
Mhm,
be that someone had a negative experience giving a speech or had a lot of bullying when they were little. But
yeah.
I think part of it is like people just don't like to be judged.
Mhm,
And I think people are afraid that, especially these days, when we're in front of a room and giving a speech or leading a meeting, that people are judging us.
mhm,
And what I tell my students is if you're giving a speech, people are there to listen to you. They want you to be successful. I gave a presentation in London a couple of months ago, and it was at a conference. And I was told there were going to be about 50 people there. Well, there were 300. People think because I teach public speaking, I don't get nervous. Of course, I still get nervous, right? So I had the presentation done. I was really confident about the content because I'd spent a lot of days of my life working on it, like literally days. And I had practiced it and all that. So it was solid, and I knew that. But what I wasn't expecting was the 300 people. And so when I got to the space and I saw the room, it was like an open space. I was like, oh my God. And and I'm like, I can do this. This is what I teach. Like, I can do this. And it really doesn't matter whether it's 50 or 300. You just have to like be confident in your presentation, practice, do what you need to do. Because I think I tell my students this all the time, like everyone needs to prepare for a situation in a different way, right?
mm,
And for me, it's knowing my material. Well, speaking on something that I know something about. Like I never speak on and off topic. It's always stuff that's related to my career. Um, and I put together a solid deck, presentation deck, and I have lots of research behind it. And I do it, weeks in advance, and then I practice days in advance because I need to know that when I get up there, I'm going to know my stuff because I don't script anything I do. It's all extemporaneous. But I know the slides so well, I can just walk through it. Um, but you still get nervous. And yes, people are judging you. But the thing is, like, if they're there to listen to you, they're there to listen to you. And that's what you have to remember. They want to learn from you,
mm,
right? And what was so lovely about the situation in London was people really enjoyed it. And I didn't say, "Oh, what did you think of it?" They did that for me. They posted on LinkedIn like that it was one of the best things they had attended at the conference, or it was the best thing they attended at the conference. And that was really nice. And that was for me, that was very rewarding because, as I mentioned, I had worked really, really hard on this presentation. I was really excited to give it. So it was nice that it went well. And as I said, I was nervous, absolutely. But what you find in any situation, and I think nerves are good, right? As we were saying before, like being scared is a good thing. I think nerves are good because when you give a presentation or a speech or keynote, whatever it is, a workshop, um, it's natural to be nervous for that first minute or first 2 minutes. But then you kind of get into a cadence, especially if you know your stuff, you know your material, and you just deliver the speech.
mm,
And people are there to listen to you, and that's what you have to remember. Um, I think it would be unnatural not to be nervous. And I always tell people like the way to help calm the nerves is to know your material, practice, and also um, know what your challenges are. Like, make sure you have an outfit you're wearing, whatever it is that you feel comfortable in. Make sure that you have woken up if it's an early morning thing, like know what routine you need to prepare, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because that's really important. It's not witchcraft. It's really important. You need to walk into any situation feeling confident.
mhm.
And, whether you're giving a speech, going to a networking event, going to a business dinner, like you need to walk in feeling strong and feeling confident about yourself. So I'm a big believer in sleep. Like I always try to get a good night's sleep before I give an event. I don't before I give a speech, I never eat because I'm so like hyped up. I don't want to, it's just not a good thing for me. If I can, I'll go for a run in the morning before I give a presentation because I find that like then I'm even more on, even if it means getting up super early, I find that I'm more on point and my sort of get the blood flowing. Like those are all things, but you have to think about what do you need,
Yeah.
um, because ultimately, you do you, as everybody says. And I think when you're giving a speech, part of the way to control those nerves or for you to think about what is it that I need to be successful in this,
Yep.
and how can I best do that for myself. Um, so back to answer your question again, like I think people get nervous sometimes because they've had negative experiences.
Mm.
I think people get nervous because they're being afraid to be judged. But I think if you look back on those experiences and try to find the positive, right, what you learn from it. And then if you think about the fact that, like I said, if you're giving a speech, people are there to listen to you. They want you to be successful. If you realize those two things, that's going to help it. That's going to make it a little bit easier to deliver the speech.
Yeah. So I see that, like, when it comes to the presentation and so on, it's really like preparing yourself for that one moment that you're going to be in front of the people that's the most important piece of doing, like preparing for all of it. So you basically do slides, you basically presenting the whole the whole presentation probably a couple of times, so you are actually like very confident. And then also, like, because it's your topic and the thing that you love to do, is like it's you never basically are never prepared for something, because I don't think
Well,
it's really good idea to not being prepared for this type of
yeah,
situation, right?
because you have to think of like, how do you want to represent yourself, right?
Yeah.
How do you want to come across? My on my podcast, um, it's very, very raw, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't use any fancy backdrop. We use Riverside just like you do. Um, it's super casual, because that's the focus of the show, right? Is getting very visceral with people,
Mm-hmm.
um, and levels of conversation that probably neither of us expect to go into. We just go there, and that's a very different vibe than when I give a workshop, right? My
Yep.
workshops are, at least they start off more
Yep.
formal. There's something in communication. It's called the audience connection. And what that means is, whether it's a podcast or a keynote or a workshop, whatever it is, you need to understand who your audience is, right?
Yep.
And you need to understand what are their needs and what are their wants.
Yep.
And if you are the podcast host or the speaker or the author of the book or whatever, what is it that you can do to connect with that audience from the beginning?
Yeah. So it lands basically.
Because you have one chance to connect with them, and
Yep.
that's in the beginning. If
Mm-hmm.
you don't connect with them, they're not going to pay attention,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
There are times when I've given a speech, starts off really strong, and I kind of get midway through and I see that people are starting to look at their phones, or they're coughing, or they get up to go to the bathroom. None of those are good signs.
Yep. Yeah.
So if you know your material and you know your slides or whatever your content is, you can pivot.
Mm-hmm.
Something you can do, a technique you can do. Sometimes you can pause and you can ask the audience questions. Boy, does that make people focus. And if you
Yeah.
really want to get them, call on people, right?
Yeah.
Because then everyone's like, oh, it's like when you go to a comedy show and you never want to sit in the first row because you don't want the comedian to harass
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's the same thing, right? Like, so I've done that before. I've called on people,
Yep.
oh, the gentleman back there with the red tie. Like, what about what I just said? And they're like, oh my God.
uh,
But it works.
yeah. Yeah.
And you do that because you want to bring the audience back to the
Yeah.
speech, right?
Does it
Um,
just
and that's
out of
okay because it's
curiosity?
your moment to shine.
Yeah. Yeah. Out of curiosity, does the speech is actually like having the presentation and so on? Uh is it in combination, or like there are some type of principles that you use even like from selling standpoint, like literally, like when it comes to like persuasion, and like how people, like what people type of words that you use, so people get actually like intrigued and all, like they found the desire, like presenting it, that you show it the way that it's actually create desire and so on.
I think, one of the things in communications, and it's
Uh-huh.
specifically when you're giving a speech, and also I think with a podcast this applies, you want to make sure that your explanation, especially if it's a complicated topic,
Mm-hmm.
you want to make sure that it's something that everybody can understand, right?
Yep.
So the analogy I always give is, when I started in PR years ago, I was in tech and I worked for IBM.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked on something that was pre-cloud computing, but it's the modern day equivalent. And the rule always was, if you can explain it to your mom,
Uh-huh.
then it's probably good for the general public. Now, my mother is highly, highly intelligent, right? She's PhD, but tech is not her thing. So there would be I'm not making this up. There'd be times where I would call her. I'm like, I need to. Can you have 5 minutes? I'm like, can I explain this to you, right? And it would be sometimes more than 5 minutes because I was so in the tech that I had to like step out of my own box and try to explain it to her. So when you're giving how that applies is when you're giving a speaking or hosting a podcast show when it's a complicated topic, you need to break it down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like if you read any of the publications like the FT or the Wall Street Journal, they're sometimes when they have a complicated subject line or complicated content, they break it down. They'll put the definition of it between commas or something like that. It's because you can't ever assume that everyone knows what you're talking about. And when you're giving a speech, you can never assume that people understand. So ways to do that, right? I wouldn't know if I would call it persuasion, but I would probably call it like making sure that everybody gets it. I don't know what the formal term for that is. A great thing to do is if you're giving a speech on a musical artist, or if you're at a medical conference and giving a presentation on a type of surgery, if it's a musical artist, you could show video clips or play their music. And then if it's a surgery, you could show clips of a surgery, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
To give everybody that base knowledge of what you're talking about, because they're all in the room, they're all watching it together or listening to it, whatever. And then you're like, okay, I've provided them with a base level of what I'm talking about, right? That's one thing. You can ask the audience questions to kind of gauge as the speaker how much they know. That's really important to do, especially if it's complicated. Or you just like start off with basic information. Most presentations, it depends upon the length, right? Three main points, 5 main points, maybe a bit more, but it's always in odd numbers. And you can make that first point like general information about your subject. Then as a speaker that you've provided that to them. Now, whether or not they're listening is another story. But at least if you start off with general information, you're giving everyone that knowledge. It's kind of like the reverse pyramid, right? You have the most important information. In journalism, we do this. The most important information on top, and then the least important on the bottom. So with a speech, if you really want to connect with that audience in the beginning, you give them that general information, and so they have that knowledge, and then you go deeper and deeper from there. And that is something that I always define my topics. Like when I did the speech in London, it was on leadership and resilience, leadership, and burnout. I made sure that my first chunk was defining leader. What do I mean by leadership? What is resilience? What is burnout?
So you
and then
really,
as we navigated, we got into like a concept of something called emotional contagion, right? We defined that.
So you literally have to go like to basics to like literally to actually like people actually understands what you are talking about, because like
so with like burnout, according to like the American Psychological Society, burnout is boom, right? There it is on the slide. It takes 5 seconds to do that. But then everybody knows what you're talking about. Because if you've got to remember, you've got to get your audience's attention in the beginning, whether it's a conversation, speech, whatever it is, podcast, and then you want to keep them. If you flash in terms or ideas that are too complicated, people are going to disconnect and you're never going to get them back.
Right.
So it's really, really important that when you're giving a speech, that you break stuff down. It's like, think about like a one-on-one conversation in a networking event. If you're talking to somebody and they're talking in really technical terms,
you have no clue.
Your thought is like, okay, where's the bathroom, right? Because you're just like, I don't get it. Oh, there's my friend. I have to go. You're like this, And you don't want to be that person, but sometimes you find you are, because people are so into what they do. And you feel, at least personally, I feel like an idiot saying, I don't really get what you're talking about, but I've learned to do it, because what I've learned is like people actually, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, no, it's not my space. Don't get it. Want to learn, but don't get it. People don't mind answering that question. And so, don't disengage and pivot and go to the bathroom. Like, ask the question. Like, I have to be honest, like, I kind of like, this isn't my space. Could you explain, like, take me back a few steps? And people might laugh, but for the most part, they will do it for you, and they will probably be happy that you asked.
100%.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so I actually like because like anyway, I'm studying like lots of different type of books like about speeches, also like
Yeah.
sales also. Like have you ever read the book Pitch Anything or from Oren Klaff?
I have not read it, but I have heard a
Okay,
lot
okay,
about it.
you have to read that. Oh my
Okay.
gosh, that's insane. But also like really good technique, for example, when you are having a speech,
Yeah.
is to bring a really intriguing story and do not finish
Mm,
the story. Finish the story in the middle of the story where it
yes.
is
That's what
something
I
that
do.
something is happening and people get the attention. And then when you explain the a little bit more complicated or a raw context, then you can like, oh, by the way, this the story and finish like this.
You keep them engaged to your
Yeah,
point
yeah, yeah, exactly.
because they're like, well, I want to know what happened.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like a
yeah,
your own little version of a movie. Yeah, that's an excellent idea. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Um, because you've got to keep, not
mhm,
everybody is innately curious, as we were
yeah,
talking about
yeah,
before.
yeah.
So you've got to keep that curiosity up. You've got to keep that interest in you going on. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a really
you
great
should
idea.
test it. Maybe you'll, yeah, you'll see if
I
it,
think it's gonna be my next
yeah.
move. I'm excited.
Anyway, very, very cool. I love that because this is really interesting. I have never had actually, this conversation about like public speaking with none of those like people
Yeah.
guests on the show. So this is really, really interesting topic to actually even like chat about and talk about because like I've been always like, oh my gosh, I will like I get into entrepreneurship through like Russell Brunson was basically the one of the first people that like showed me the entrepreneurship. I don't know if you know Russell Brunson. Have you heard ClickFunnels and so on? Like that company of
Yeah.
founding. Yeah. Okay. So that was through his challenge, like through his live events and so on, and like I was always very interested in like public speaking and so on, and then you get into that room and see that people, and then like you actually see the stage and like how they present and so on. It's not that crazy actually. Like it
No, and it,
seems too big in front of the like behind the camera, but when you
it's
are in the room, it's not as crazy. And I was like, oh my gosh, it has to be like insane experience and so on, right? And then I get into that room and I was like, wow, this is doable. Like literally, this is doable.
yes. One thing that's really important if you're an entrepreneur and you're listening to our conversation is, and if you're pitching, because I run I run an
Yeah,
entrepreneurship group for a university. Um, and so I go to a lot of pitches, and I'm actually going to a conference this week for entrepreneurship. And there's several pitch competitions, which I love.
yeah.
But this is one thing that I see so many people don't do, right? If you're pitching, especially if you're trying to raise money, you've got to be clear about what your company is, what it does. You've got to be clear about what your exit is, and you've got to be clear about what you're asking for.
Mm,
And when it comes to explaining your company, remember what I said. You can't explain it in tech terms. You have to pretend you're trying to explain it to your mom or your best friend or someone who doesn't know your business idea,
yeah,
someone who's not on your board, right? Super important because not every investor, especially the angels, like angels are just looking to invest in stuff that they're excited about. Well, the way to get them excited is to explain what the company is, what problem it solves, right?
yeah,
You've got to have an exit because if you don't know what your exit is, like everyone can't be a unicorn company. That's impossible, right?
yeah.
So know what's the end goal
Hmm.
and what are you asking for and how can people get involved? I have sat in so many pitch meetings, so many, dozens of them, probably hundreds at this point, where they've got the co-founders up there. They have what they think is the greatest idea since the post-it note, and they're all over the place. They can't explain their vision. They can't explain their
Ah,
exit. They don't ever communicate what they're asking for.
yeah.
And you're like, okay, next. And
Oh,
you only have one chance to pitch this stuff in
yeah,
these
yeah,
meetings.
yeah. So it's like it's a small group of meeting, like where you are like literally like pitched by somebody about like some idea or so on. If you want to be
Yeah.
part of it, interesting. So that's still happening also that way. Okay, I didn't even
Yeah.
know like that is like this is like normal because usually it's like more of the the bigger companies, they have like, for example, if they want to like become like, is it like more for investors or is
It's
like
for
more?
it's for potential
Yeah,
investors.
yeah,
Yeah,
that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah. And
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
there are dinners, there are conferences, there's
right,
all this stuff.
right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, if you have a company, like whether you're raising money, whether you're just trying to partner with other people, like make
Yeah,
sure that you understand really, what is your product, who do you serve, and how are you going to do it? Like
yeah.
you've got to, I taught a class last week at a local university on the importance of market research. And, an idea is just an idea
Mm,
without data. Like it's your idea. And until you prove the market validity of it, it's just an idea.
yeah.
People aren't going to, I mean, some people will invest in your dream,
Mhm.
but most people want to invest in what your reality could be
Right.
based upon data that you find, right?
Yeah.
There are very few things that are perfect for everyone. I think that it's really important as founders, uh, that people get opinions from people they don't know, like not their
Mm,
best friends, not
mm,
their board. Um, I know with our podcast, I talk about the podcast constantly, right? The reason is not because I like to talk about it constantly, but talking about an idea is a really great way of getting feedback. And in research, there's qualitative, which is like opinion, and there's quantitative, which is numbers, right? Well,
yeah.
qualitative feedback is really easy to get by just
Mhm.
asking people. So I have an idea for such and such. What do you think?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So easy to do. So
Mhm.
if you're a founder, if you're an entrepreneur and you're listening to our conversation, like one of your takeaways, like for me, should be like if you have an idea for a company, you need to live it, breathe it, eat it. And
Mm,
you need to
mhm,
market test it. And the
mhm,
easy way to market test it, you don't have to hire a firm, you don't have to do something on social media. Just talk to people,
mhm.
and talk to people that you don't know at a networking event or whatever, and just see what their reaction is. If they're like, "Oh my God, that's amazing. Tell me more." Well, that's a really good sign.
Yeah.
And if the reaction is like, "I don't really understand that," or "Oh, that doesn't apply to me," and you get a lot of those, probably not a good sign. So don't be shy. Don't be shy if you have a business. Like talk to people, get their feedback, get that qualitative feedback, listen, take notes, and learn from those conversations. It's so incredibly important.
Very, very cool. Um, so I would end up this conversation with a last question, and that would be like, when you see yourself with all the success, all the losses, if you would say
Yeah.
this way, um, where are you heading right now? What is the goal for you? What is the driving source that's actually like lighting you up and like literally make you move every single day to, to achieve the goal?
I think, something that for me, the driving force is just a love of life and a passion for learning. Like
Mm,
that just is kind of what propels me. Um, I very much, especially what I've been through, like very much appreciate the everyday. As I'm sitting here, I'm like, it's a beautiful day in New York. It's a little chilly, but like it's sunny, like the trees are starting to bloom here. Like
yeah,
that gives me joy, right?
yeah.
Um, so for me, what motivates and drives me, keeps me going is just kind of the passion for life and the zest
Mhm,
for learning. And fortunately, I'm in a place where I get to interact and I get to learn from a lot of people, so that keeps me going. Um, where all this is going to wind up, I don't know. I've never been anybody who's had a specific plan. I've had dreams, right? Um, some of them have worked out, some of them haven't, but that's fine because what I found is if you just let yourself be you and give yourself permission to move forward and learn from the peaks as well as the valleys, but more from the valleys, right? From those failures as opposed to the
yeah,
successes,
yeah.
that eventually you'll find yourself in a place where you're happy. And I think there's no one, definition of happiness. Like all of that is very personal. But I think for me, if I feel fulfilled, which I do, if I feel intellectually challenged, which I do, and if I feel like, most importantly, that I'm helping other people advance, grow, learn, then I'm good. Then I'm getting out of life what I need. Um, if down the road I find myself in a position where I'm not empowering others, where I'm not mentoring, where I'm not coaching, where I'm not advising, and I feel stagnant, then I know that I need to do something to pivot. And I don't know what that pivot will be, but so much of where I am now is just based upon ideas, right? Oh, I think I could do that, or maybe I'll try that, or conversations.
Yeah.
And um, and yeah, that's been scary. Um, but at some point, you find yourself in a position where, you kind of pinch yourself and you're like, oh my God, like that was my idea, and it's actually worked out.
Yeah.
And celebrate yourself for that moment, and then move on to something else, right? But life is not, a linear path. Life is definitely a series of ups and downs. And, I've had a particularly rough couple of years with the health thing that I had, but like I'm okay. And letting myself be okay and letting myself move forward, it has been incredibly important. And so for anyone out there that's kind of like, all right, I'm bored with life, just think about who you are. Think about what you
Mm,
love. Think about where you want to
this is
go. Think
really
about
tough
what you haven't
question.
done.
This
Think
is
about what
really
you
tough
haven't
question.
done.
Who you are? This is really, really tough question to ask. Most
Yeah.
people don't even know who they are. Like if
No.
like yeah, this is crazy.
So
Like
that's what you want
I've
to do.
been asking that question for a couple of like every week maybe to make sure that I actually know who I am
Yeah. And
because
and if
it's
you don't know, or if you're confused, that's okay, because that's part of learning. That's part of growing.
yeah.
I don't think I don't think I mean, we ever really know ourselves perfectly. That's impossible. And if you do, then like maybe I don't know. I think that we are always discovering new things about ourselves.
Yeah.
And we are always learning more about what we're good at, what we're great at, what we're
Hmm.
not great at. But
Yeah.
I think, the key thing, I think the one thing that it hasn't always been easy, but the one thing that I've always done is I've peeked around that corner
Mm,
and seen what that opportunity is.
yeah.
And sometimes it's worked out and sometimes it hasn't. But I, even now, like stuff comes along, I'll get a phone call about something or an email about something. And I'm like, sure, I will absolutely try it. I will.
Hmm.
And you know what? And if I try it and it works out, wonderful. If I try it and it works out and I don't enjoy it, that's fine. And if I try it and it works out and it's not great, that's also fine, because I tried. And you can't go back in life. You can only go forward. And you don't want to be in a position where you regret not doing stuff. You want to look back on all of it and smile. And to me, that's the most important thing, is that ability to look back and say, I tried, I learned, and here I am. And so for me, that's kind of where I am and where I'm going. And I don't know what the end goal is, but I'm excited about whatever it is.
Love it. Love it. You know, I don't know who said that, but life is pretty much like every way you decide to go, it's always a struggle. So you
Yes.
better to decide to go with the struggle that actually is worthy to struggle for,
Yep.
right?
Yep. That's so true. Yeah.
So anyway, thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you
Three
for
rapid
having me.
fire questions before we completely end this conversation. And those three rapid fire are: first one is, what book changed or brought you the most, uh, or change your point of view on life or a business? Like, what one book that you can recommend?
Um, I read it a while ago, but Michelle Obama's book called Becoming.
Mhm.
I learned a lot about her, a lot about how she evolved into the, amazing person that she is today. That's one that I think is it's an important read. And it wasn't for my affinity for politicians that I read that. I just admire her as a woman, and I admire her leadership and kind of how she was, first lady, and how she's continued to be an icon here in the U.S. and globally. So that book, her book was one that I really enjoyed and learned a lot from.
Very cool. The second one would be, if you could delete one piece of advice from the internet, what that would be that doesn't serve people at all.
That you have to be on social media. I I, I am because of kind of what I do, but you don't have to be. I think
Right.
that we all could all lead perfectly happy lives, not without social media. So that would be the one thing that I would delete.
And if this would be your last interview you would ever done, what would be the message for the generations that you would love to leave behind you?
It's okay to be scared. Scariness is a good thing. It's okay to failure is also a good thing. But when you're scared or when you feel like you failed, think about what you learned and remember those things. And over time, what you're going to realize is what you learn, the things that you learn from those kind of points of frustration, they're going to become key points of view and they're going to empower you to every day be a better version of yourself. And I think that's a really important thing as we navigate life because life can be overwhelming and life can be scary. But if you take a deep breath and say to yourself, I've got this, you're going to get it. You're going to be okay. And I think that's a really, really important to really important thing to realize, especially when we're in situations that feel uncomfortable. But remember, that's a fleeting thought. Like it's fleeting because eventually you're going to be like, I got this. And not only do I got this, but I'm really good at this.
Right.
And good for you. That's amazing. And I hope that everybody gets there.
Love it. Well, thank you so much.
Oh,
And
my pleasure.
where people can find you to connect with you.
Absolutely. So it's Kathryn, Kathryn Lancioni, Lancioni. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. It's Kathryn_Lancioni. I'm on Facebook. And I have my website, kathrynlancioni.com. Feel free to email. And I manage my own inbox. So either through LinkedIn or my website, I promise I will get back to you. And Adam, again, thanks for listening. Thanks for having me on the show. I really enjoyed the conversation and listening to all the great stuff that you've learned along the way. It was a
Thank you
real
so
pleasure.
much. Thank you so much. And for everybody who's listening, we will see you in the next episode. Bye for now.